Hello, kids. How are you doing? Welcome to the HockeyBuzzcast and HockeyBuzz.com. We are going to be joined by Russ shortly, who I have a bone to pick with today because of the misinformation I was given yesterday about the groundhog.
I told him it was going to come up.
But I'm going to wait till he gets here to talk about that.
Yeah. Okay. Let's start with this. I'm a traditionalist, and now I can see how the Cleveland baseball team's name was offensive to some people, and that's why they changed it. But change it to something good. The Cleveland Guardians it's terrible. If they would have gone back in history, I thought the Cleveland Spiders, which they were called before they were called the Indians, was a good name, but I don't know if they couldn't market it or what, but the Cleveland Guardians is just dumb. Now today.
Well, why is it dumb, Mike? I'm just curious.
It just feels clunky. It feels sort of boring. It's just like it doesn't speak of Cleveland. I don't think it's a good sports team name.
Yeah, I didn't like it either, but I don't have the same passion that you do.
Right. I'm passionate about a whole bunch of stupid things. But today I would have been in favor, and I think that we both, when we talked about this, I think everybody said we would have been in favor of them keeping it as the Washington Football team.
Yeah, I really liked that. I thought it was kind of a classy name,
Yeah, I liked it, and it was sort of emblematic or echoing like English football teams.
Right.
So I didn't mind it.
Right. So now they come out today, and of course they screwed up the release of this because apparently it was like in the stadium and somebody saw that they were putting up like placards of it. It's the Washington Commanders. And this is the funny thing. I told somebody this morning that the name was the Washington Commanders, and they immediately said, "Hey, they can call their nickname can be the Commies." I'm like, great, the Washington Commies. There you go.
Didn't we do that already? So we don't have to do that again.
Well, remember during the 40s and 50s, maybe
50s.
Earlier than that, they changed the Cincinnati Reds to the Cincinnati Redlegs because they didn't want Reds being associated with communism. So,
yeah, Redlegs. Yep, that's true.
So I don't know what you think, guys, but I thought the Commanders is pretty weak.
I don't mind it. I mean, is there something that's probably better? Yeah, but I didn't mind it. I just think it's funny that someone took a picture through a window and destroyed their whole release.
What wasn't it? Joe Theismann that accidentally broke it?
I don't know who did it, but
Was it Theismann?
I thought I read some tweet there. I hope I have this right. I thought I saw a tweet of somebody said that he inadvertently spilled the beans last week with it on. But I don't know. Maybe somebody had it wrong. But apparently he knew what the name was and was just talking kind of offhand, and it just kind of slipped out. So
yeah, now, Act, you've got a bone to pick with Russ, and then we'll get to the
Yes,
of the
Russ.
Yes.
You left me terrified yesterday because Russ is the one who reports on deaths, as we all know, and yesterday he reports on the death of the groundhog before the day before Groundhog Day. Thinking that I thought this was Punxsutawney Phil, the groundhog,
No, you didn't say that.
I didn't say it was Punxsutawney Phil. I gave a different name, but what I did know.
But I just thought maybe they just changed the name, and
that's what I thought.
But we all assumed that this was the groundhog, right? Like the groundhog.
Yeah.
I was like, how could there not be a duplicate, or how could there not be a backup groundhog? We talk all about backup goalies. How could you not have a backup groundhog?
Yeah, this was like Groundhog Gus or something like that. Wasn't that something like that?
No.
It was Millie.
Millville. Yeah, it was
Millville Mel. Millie Mel or something like that. And but it turns out that this is not the groundhog. This is New Jersey's groundhog.
Right. And so I started to look around. I talked to people at the hockey game. Anthony was sitting next to me. Nobody had ever heard of New Jersey having their own groundhog. And so when it said it was canceled, I'm like, all right, I guess they just canceled it. And I had no idea like other states were using other groundhogs. Now, heck, I really hope you don't think that Punxsutawney Phil is the same groundhog because they only lived to like 7 years. You realize that?
Oh no, there's actually a documentary I've seen on the Punxsutawney Phil and the whole Groundhog Day experience, like how it works.
No, I get it, but you don't think that it's the original one,
no,
right?
no.
I'm just making sure you were in a bad mental state yesterday.
I was upset because the Groundhog Day had been canceled, you said, and for me, I thought of all the people who, having watched the documentary, I know all the people that travel to Punxsutawney, Pennsylvania, all the big. There's a big party that happens, and those people were already there. So
New Jersey,
I was like, that's just wrong.
New Jersey's groundhog is named Newark Nick, so that's
Newark Nick.
No, but that's a good one.
That's actually good. But Kev, like, Eck was going to go and start filming the ones in his yard and see if there was a shadow for them. Like, he was this distraught about it. Like, this is my mother's birthday, and I've always had an interest in Groundhog Day, right? But like, not to the extent that Eck did. He wanted to actually be the groundhog guy for today, just because.
Yeah, Eck's backyard is a game preserve for groundhogs.
There are several out there, and
we have them in our backyard too.
Yeah, and they're great. They're great animals. Like I said before, they are just sorry.
Not to Mike. Mike wants to cook them.
They are just big squirrels. They are part of the squirrel family. So
groundhogs.
Groundhogs are just big squirrels. How many people like the movie Groundhog Day?
I love everybody. We all love it.
Epically classic, and it's made the holiday
way
more popular.
The NPR just did a piece on it yesterday. I heard them discuss it. Was it NPR? I don't know. Some radio stations listen to, and they had like all these kind of experts. They're talking about the meaning of all that, which I had never really given much thought to. I just kind of liked the movie, but apparently there's a deeper meaning on that.
I know that Punxsutawney Phil travels around the country, and he actually does all year long. Is and I was just upset that there wouldn't be.
Where else does he go? I've never heard about this.
No, he's everywhere. He goes to visit schools all over the country.
Well, he doesn't go to New Jersey, right? Because they have their own. So,
well, no, I think that's new, and I think that's recent. But I don't think I think that competing groundhogs. It did, although it does make sense because the idea of the groundhog is, the weather is not the same everywhere.
Russ, Punxsutawney Phil is opening up for Graham Nash.
I guess, but I'm just, I'm a little appalled that automatically X thinks the Pennsylvania groundhog is better than the New Jersey groundhog, and there's really he has no grounds.
Better than the ground.
He has no grounds for that. Like, how are you quantifying this?
Yeah. And one thing is true about Russ, about you being Dr. Death. If I saw at a quick glance a piece about a groundhog on your Facebook, I would immediately think, "Oh, the groundhog died," because that's what I see. When I see something you write about someone, I'm thinking, "Oh my God, he's dead."
Russ's middle name is Kevorkian. Okay. Now we're going to cover this. We're going to cover this more in detail on a Rockology show, and if we can get you on this show, and I'll probably try to get a couple other people. But again, the Rock and Roll Hall of Fame is a friggin' atrocity. They come out with their list of nominees, and some of these are deserving, and some of these definitely deserve to get in. And I hope Pat Benatar gets in. Kate Bush was extremely influential. I like Duran Duran, Eurythmics, Judas Priest. But okay, I'll just list off quickly here the names of some that don't belong in the Rock and Roll Hall of Fame. This is my problem. If it's the Music Hall of Fame, no problem. But Beck is, I don't know if Beck consider rock and roll. Devo, no. Eminem is hip hop. Fela Kuti, I don't even know who the hell that is.
Me neither.
MC5, maybe. The New York Dolls is more glam. Dolly Parton, for Christ's sake. I mean, I love her. She's one of the best voices in the world. She's a country singer. She's not a rock and roll singer. Rage Against the Machine, okay. Lionel Richie, completely pop. Carly Simon, okay. A Tribe Called Quest. Give me a friggin' break.
Let me throw this out there, just not really disputing your point, because on the merits of it, you're absolutely right. But don't you think the Rock and Roll Hall of Fame has sort of evolved into a Music Hall of Fame?
Then change the name. I would have no problem if it was the Music Hall of Fame.
Yeah, change the name. I'm with Mike.
Yeah, you could do that. Although I'm sure one of the issues is they've been marketing it for so long like this.
Yeah, it's a big part of Cleveland,
right? So I think that's kind of what's happened. It's just become something.
Well, how about this, Kev? Why don't they have a portion of the voting open to the public? Because Jan Wenner's got way too much power in deciding who gets in and who doesn't. And I think the public should do a part of this online.
And this is my point. And I want you to comment on this, Kev. Jan and Russ is right. Jan Wenner and Rolling Stone magazine have a great influence on the Rock and Roll Hall of Fame. And if you study the Rock and Roll Hall of Fame and their history, there's one type of music they hate with a passion. If you look in the Rolling Stone record guide, they rate progressive rock bands that they give them 2 stars or 3 stars when they're giving like Bruce Springsteen's Nebraska 6,000 stars. Yeah. No King Crimson. They're just as much of an influence on bands like Genesis and Yes and Rush. No Emerson, Lake and Palmer. No Jethro Tull. You're a joke, Rock and Roll Hall of Fame. A friggin' joke.
I'm with you.
One of the issues about Hall of Fames, I've had this discussion with people about the use of fan voting for the Hockey Hall of Fame as well, is I think it's, and I don't know what the answer is to this, but the problem is I think there is a difference between the popularity of players and whether or not they're deserving to be in the Hall of Fame, because I think it's 2 different things. I mean, it's the difference between hanging numbers from the rafter and getting in the Hall of Fame. Like, there are plenty of people who are so popular in their town, whether or not they should be in the Hockey Hall of Fame or not, should have their
I'll give you an example, Kev. If you put up voting for a Hall of Fame entrant, Wendell Clark would be in the Hall of Fame.
Yeah. No, I mean and that's the issue, and I think the same would be true in a music Hall of Fame as well. There are bands that are incredibly popular that I think probably if you got the musicians themselves talk about it, that they would go,
But this is the thing with Russ and I and Eck are progressive rock fans. Progressive rock is extremely intricate, classically, most of them are classically trained. And in the 70s and the 80s, like Rolling Stone magazine rebelled against that because, we want rock and roll that anybody can play. Well, I'm sorry, I like 18-minute pieces like Tales of Topographic Oceans or Awaken or Close to the Edge.
You're in the minority. We're all in the minority there.
Yeah, that's the problem. I mean, you're speaking from your own personal perspective, but that's probably not the majority of it.
Right, but it's millions of records. And so
all I can say about this thing is having been a musician who was just loathing the concept of classifications, because I had to deal with it all the time, because we had prog rock people who play. Our guitarist and drummer were from a prog rock band that was signed with Sony. We were we won like the Kerrville Folk Festival. We won folk festivals all over the place. We won these awards for folk festivals. So we were often folk music. Then the Philadelphia Folk Festival, which is like one of the biggest folk festivals on the planet and a really famous folk festival, would never let us in, even though we were from Philadelphia, because they thought we were too rock and too pop to be in their folk festival, because we didn't have like a zither, we didn't bring a zither with us. So that was always my feeling, at least. That was my concept, that if we had a zither, we would have been okay. But since we didn't have a zither with us, we couldn't be at the Philly Folk Festival, which was always very disappointing, because like as a kid, I went to Philly Folk Festival, camped out there and lived, and I would plead to them. I would write letters to them.
To me, that's child abuse. But if you enjoyed it, it's fine.
But Mike, my point here is like classification of music and bands in different directions is really hard. It's like it's really confusing.
I'll even expand it to this, and then I'm giving away something we will talk on Rockology about. But okay, you've got somebody like Eric Clapton, who's one of the best of all time, who is in the Rock and Roll Hall of Fame as a member of the Yardbirds, as a member of Cream, and I think as a solo artist. He's in 3 times. Okay, well, Phil Collins, who sold 1 billion records, is only in as a member of Genesis. He's not in as a solo artist. I know Peter Gabriel is, but so there are people like Stevie Nicks is in the Hall of Fame separate. There's no consistency.
And there's no way of getting around. The last thing you say about this, though, Mike, is there's no way of getting around the fact that all Hall of Fames, I don't care what Hall of Fame they are political.
Yep.
Sure.
And
that's true.
You can't get around it. And there's really, it's impossible to legislate politics out of a Hall of Fame, because ultimately you have to have a format in which to put people in, and people are inherently political. So It will always be political.
It will always be that way. We talked about Marchand, who definitely should absolutely be a first ballot Hall of Famer. Probably won't be because there's people who just there's some people who just didn't like something the way he played or his style. But he should be. I mean, there's no question in my mind he should be a first ballot Hall of Famer. Anyway,
but believe me, we will have probably a 2 hour rockology on this.
I'm not guaranteeing 2 hours of anything. Don't listen to Mike. We're gonna have a show.
It'll be 2 hours just with me talking because I'm
you definitely need to do it.
It's such a subjective thing. It really is, and there are people who are just as passionate as Mike on other musicians as well. So
I mean, I would make the argument that rock and roll did actually take over for music in general. Like you could argue that too. So when you sit back and go back and forth,
I guess for a little while, but now pop has taken over.
Parton, I could definitely draw the strings to make, and then she shouldn't be in the Rock and Roll Hall of Fame, but I could make that. I can make that.
If it's the music,
I could find a way to make it. So it's like, to me, it's just.
Oh, so you're going to do a 6 degrees? Well, because Chet Atkins played guitar.
No, because of the influences she had on other musicians who we would consider rock and roll. So to me, that's like. That is something that is
if Islands
have to get to hockey.
If Islands in the Stream is considered rock.
No, you know what X's going to do on this one? He's going to say, well, she influenced Taylor Swift, and Taylor Swift is rock and roll, and she is not. I'm done.
I don't think Taylor Swift's rock and roll either, but she could very well be in the Rock and Roll Hall of Fame.
Pop. She's pop.
She's going to get in.
For sure she is.
Yeah, she's going to get in. And part of that is also the people when they come, when you and I, bring our daughters, we want to go see the Genesis section. Our daughters are going to run off and be happy that Taylor Swift's at the Rock and Roll Hall of Fame and won't be miserable. Yep. Anyway, that's the so there's a whole bunch. I mean, this is a building. Remember, this is a business too. So like this whole thing is anyway.
Yeah. And that's a very important factor of all Hall of Fames. Yeah. It is a business.
It's a business.
That has to exist.
Yeah, and there's certain things that have to be there. There's certain people that you want to. They have to play the hits of whatever. It's how it goes. Anyway, here we go. Hello, Hockey World. It is February 2nd, 2022.
I'm Michael Agello, and I'm waiting for the wing to be devoted for Dionne Warwick.
I'm Russ Cohen from Sportsology.
I'm Kevin Allen, and I'm sure Eklund knew the date because of all the discussion about Puxatani, Phil.
And it's 2/2/22.
It's also Tuesday, which I think it's not actually. It's Wednesday.
Okay, thank you.
You just blew it.
I just blew it. No, but it is. And so I think today, the show has got to be designated. Today's show has to be in honor of Jordan Tutu, because I mean, come on, number 22, Jordan Tutu, who Kevin visited the Great North with.
I did. I went seal hunting with the Great.
That's the greatest. That is the greatest story ever.
Yeah, well, especially when you consider, and I think everyone who knows me will support this. I am the least likely person on the planet to go seal hunting.
Yeah, no question. I would say that.
Yeah, and like I honestly cringe. I know there are a lot of people out there that are hunters. I cringe whenever I see like a deer on the back of somebody's truck or on.
Oh, me too. I can't take it.
It just makes me ill. So anyway, but okay, let's talk hockey. Please.
Let's get into hockey. Here we go. All right.
There were some great games last night.
There were some really good games last night. I do want to get into that. And actually, one of the more interesting ones I thought, when we talked about all the Florida Panthers, great accomplishments last month of scoring more goals than any other teams ever scored in a month, which was freaking crazy. But the fact that they the Rangers game last night with the Rangers in Florida, a good game, Russ. What were your thoughts?
Yeah, I didn't get to watch it, but it was a good game. I mean, this was one where I felt like I talked about this the other day. When you're getting close to the All-Star break, there are some dips that happen with teams. There's just no way around it. And they can't keep scoring 8 goals a game. So I think this was just a natural, hey, you know what? This was one of those games that just got away from them, and the Rangers played their game. And I think the combination of it was exactly what they needed. And so I'm not going to say the Rangers are on par with Florida or anything, but this is, Shesterkin, again, if like there was a question posed on Sirius today, like if there's one goalie you could have in a game right now and you feel like, you want to make a save or whatever. It wasn't today. It was another day. And I would put out Shesterkin every time right now.
Here's the question we talked about this morning. Like right now, would you take Shesterkin over Vasilevsky just if you had to pick a goalie? I'm not so sure you would.
At this moment, I might.
Yeah.
I mean, based on the fact that, I mean, if you're talking about all factors, like Shesterkin is making, I think, less than $6 million. He's younger. I don't think he has the wear and tear that Vasilevsky has. Vasilevsky is still the best goaltender in the world, but I think that you could make a case for choosing Shesterkin based on some of those factors.
Yeah. They're so different. They're such different goalies, different style wise. And what I like about the Russian goalie, to me, like, the Finnish goalies are always the same. It felt like every Finnish goalie that ever played
well,
the basic
style. I refer to Vasilevsky as Gumby because he is so flexible and makes saves so sort of oddly. He contorts.
He's in the Bobrovsky world. Like, those guys play the same kind of game.
Yeah.
But I would say Vasilevsky has sort of evolved. In fact, we talked about this morning. Eric Erlandson was my guest on a podcast that I did, and he sees them all the time. And he agreed with me that over time, like, he had a much greater wow factor earlier in his career. Now he's gotten to the point where he has such an unbelievable understanding of how the game is coming at him. That he's often already where he needs to be without having to be spectacular to get over there. So he's now saving kind of wear and tear on his body because he's figured out the geometry.
He's become more economical. Definitely.
Right.
Yeah.
Exactly.
But here's the bigger story with the Rangers. So, I mean, just because I've written books and Kevin knows a fair amount of history with the Rangers, and everybody does to some degree. If Chris Kreider gets 50 goals, like, that's the almost unattainable thing for Rangers players, because you're talking Vic Hatfield, Adam Graves, Jaromir Jagr. That's it in the history of the franchise.
It's interesting you bring that up, Russ, because Ray Ferraro was talking during the Devils-Leafs game because there wasn't much to talk about because it was 6-0, and he was talking about Kreider, and he says watching Kreider this year reminds him of the year that Graves scored 52, because basically everything went to Graves and everything that he touched was gold. It was just a year where it was just magical for him. And Kreider, I think, has 17 power play goals, something like that.
Yeah, and he had like 15, I think, last year. So he's even ahead of that. But the thing I will say about Graves in that year compared to Kreider now, Kreider's got a way better shot than Adam Graves did. Adam Graves literally had to score, from 5 to 7 feet, whatever side of the net, and he was great at it. But there is a difference between those two guys.
But it brings up an interesting question, and I hadn't given this even a second of thought until it just occurred to me now. But, we talk all the time about teams, getting hot in the playoffs, momentum teams, they do a thing. Does that happen with players? I mean, that Graves sort of odd season, now the Kreider deal, are they really raising their level, or as things just kind of coming together and it kind of snowballs and they just do it?
I think it's fair to say this is a career year. Every player has that arc where they're building towards something. They have a career year. I mean,
Kreider he didn't build towards this, Russ. He was building towards something and then wasn't building towards something.
No, I think
backwards. His arch was kind of
only for like a year, and Ranger fans went too crazy about it. He was good for like 24 goals a year, right? Yeah. And then he slipped back, but last year, and it was exactly at the time I defended him on SiriusXM. Literally that next night he got hot, and he got hot for the rest of the season. And I think it was that point last year where he was building towards this. Now there was something that changed in his game, and I also feel like, look, I told you I traded for him in a fantasy league because I knew Gallant would be the perfect coach for him, because he does a lot of things that Gallant wants you to do. And I just feel like that's why you're getting this number out of him now.
And the Rangers lucked out in the sense that they're starting to get this out of him after signing that contract, because, if he had this 50-goal year in his walk year free agency, he wouldn't be a Ranger now because they wouldn't be able to afford him. But they signed a long-term deal. I think he's making around $6 million a year, and something like that. And I don't think
he should be the captain. The fact that they don't have a captain is embarrassing. I don't understand what's going on with this. This used to be one of the biggest things for Ranger fans. Just like, who's the captain? There was a lot of pride in it, and there's no captain. Like, I don't get it.
Well, I would argue that he really hasn't been building to this, because when you look at his goal scoring, it was 17, 21, 21, 28, 16, 28, 24. But I would say the last 2 years he's been this because he had 20 goals in 50 games.
Right, that's what I was saying. Last year,
last year, but there's been no build up to this. Like you couldn't have done a chart and saying, okay, this year,
no, that's true.
50. There was no, gradual build up. But the last 2 years, this has been him.
Yes.
20 goals in 50 games is, what is that? 30? It's a 35 goal season.
Yeah, but like I said, he got off to a slow start last year, and fans were all over him. And it was at that point last year that I said, I felt like that's when he was turning into this guy. And now he's this guy. I don't think he'll score 50 every year, but he might score 50 this year, and that's a pretty big deal.
Now, I have to.
While I'm thinking about it, I have a message to deliver from someone who's part of the Predators organization who saw our discussion on that.
Okay.
Forsberg is one of the most consistent players in the history, he said, of the Predators. So he wasn't so sure. So
there you go. I agree.
You know who that person is. So
I know who the person is, and this is now like the second time I've ticked off that person, but that's okay.
Yeah,
well, I like that person.
Yeah. So
and Forsberg is. He's got 24 goals, and it's like I think he scored like 20 goals in his 20 goals in his last 25 games.
Well, that's the thing about he is consistent when you look at his statistics, and I mean, a huge Predators guy, but he is streaky. Like we can't get around the fact.
Streaky is a whole. Yeah, we had that exact. He and I had that line scheduled. Streaky is completely different.
Right, it is different than consistent.
Most goal scorers are actually streaky.
Right, they are. That's for sure.
Okay, that's fair. But I think and maybe this is just me. I always want more out of Forsberg. I don't think he's ever reached his peak.
I think that's fair, but I just think that, just the idea that he's sort of lost his consistency. He's actually kept it up. So
okay.
Well, in the last hour, Elliot Friedman released something about the Arizona thing. Did you see this?
No.
Okay, so it says there are 2 big meetings upcoming. The first is Wednesday, which I guess would be today, or maybe next Wednesday, probably next Wednesday, to address how the Coyotes' potential new arena could affect the operations at the Phoenix airport. The second is scheduled for February 10th for Tempe City Council. Do they approve an arena plan? If so, getting mixed messages. The Coyotes will try and close their deal to play at Arizona State until the new arena would be ready. Now, the arena, the arena, the idea of playing at a 5,000 seat arena, we've talked about a little bit.
Only makes sense if they have a deal for a new building,
right? And that is and basically their estimates that there's going to be it goes down to 3,200 for NHL because of things they've put in there. Right? So
that's what Friedman reported.
Yeah.
And so Gary Bettman would sign off on that. Do we know that?
Yeah. If the building is if there's a shovel in the ground and they're committed to it.
Okay, but let's just say that is all happening.
Right.
We always got the impression that a building had to be an NHL building, meaning a certain amount of seats, a certain amount of workout area, a certain amount of everything.
Yeah.
This is no seats. I'm shocked that the NHL would even consider this.
Well, I mean, Randy or Flamester in the chat confirmed this. The Calgary Corral was about 7,000, 6,500 or 7,000 seats. So
right, but Gary Bettman wasn't there then.
But what's it matter if it's 14,000 or 5,000 if you're only drawing 5,000?
Okay, but if that's the case, then why are they building a new place? You know what I mean?
Why
are they even there then?
If you build it, they will come. That's always sort of been the philosophy of.
But they've been there for 25 years and they've never come. That's the problem. It's
that's not actually true, Mike. They came downtown.
In the America West building downtown, they did.
They came
when they had Roenick and Kachuk. But in the last, I'd say 15 years, ever since the problems happened, they had a team in the conference final in 2012. They drew squat. That's So
yeah. No, you're right.
Right, so for optics, Kev, let me ask you about this. For optics, when they don't have full stands at this 4,000 seat arena and it's being televised or people write about it, what does that say about the league? What are people going to say about the NHL?
The same thing they're saying about right now with the Florida Panthers playing so well, and yet on Twitter, every time the Panthers play, you see people commenting about they're playing in front of nobody. So, but I'm not defending it. I
get it. No, I'm just asking.
The Panthers did have a full house the other night. They are picking up. They are up about
Well,
that's good.
I think they're I think they're still second to last, aren't they?
They are. They're still. I mean, they
no,
are.
last is Buffalo. Second
Right.
last is Arizona. Third last is Ottawa. Then Florida.
Then fourth last. I'm sorry.
Yeah, they're still.
I didn't give them enough. I didn't give the Panthers enough credit.
But that's
so horrible, and there's no question that they have problems.
Pathetic. That's absolutely pathetic. You've got the best team in the league, and nobody. You watch a game on Tuesday night in Sunrise, and you see more empty seats than you see people. It's a disgrace.
Well, I mean it is, but don't you think? Will we ever see a time in hockey where every franchise is going to, play? I mean, on a percentage basis, hockey does as well as anybody in terms of filling the seats. But I think there's always going to be 3 or 4 or 5 teams that just don't do as well.
My issue here, Kev, is the fact that you've had franchises in the NFL move, you've had franchises in the NBA move, and other than Atlanta moving to Winnipeg, the hockey has been remarkably static for the majority of Bettman's reign. And I don't think that's a good thing, because at a certain point you have to admit that a thing is not working in a certain place, and there are other opportunities out there like Houston, like Quebec City, like Portland or Milwaukee or there are other venues out there, other places.
Yeah, but I think Bettman believes that, and there's evidence of that as well in the National Hockey League, that, sometimes if you just have to work at it. I mean, they had to give the Nashville Predators an edict. They could have gone either way. The Carolina Hurricanes, although still not perfect, have done much better since they won, that championship. And it's like I said, they're still not even a great attendance franchise, but they've done well. And I think Bettman always feels that stability is better for the league. Now, I can see your argument as well, because, you would think if you put a franchise in Houston, it would be a winner.
Okay, but Ken,
it's not that much different than Miami. I mean, in a lot of ways. I mean, there are differences for sure. It's younger. I mean, there's Tampa is doing extremely well right now, which is interesting. Like in Florida,
although it's not really Miami. It's not even really close to Miami.
Right.
Yeah, right. It's not.
We were there for the draft. It's believe me, it was a 40-minute drive to Florida.
Yeah, no, it's true. It's not Miami, but we could say East Florida versus West Florida probably better. And Southwest Florida is younger. It is just where Tampa is a younger crowd than Southeast Florida, which is still older. So that is something that is definitely playing into it.
Yeah. I've often wondered though, you remember when, because I've heard that Oklahoma City put up a really nice presentation when they were trying to get an expansion team, like what the league would be like had they gone there, or, Kansas City had a, brand new arena. Remember, they were like the hot city, that kind of stuff. It would be interesting to see what would happen to those franchises, but it doesn't take long. Like I remember Columbus was, filled up the building. You couldn't get a ticket. I remember I tried to take my family to go see a Columbus Blue Jackets game. I literally couldn't afford the tickets because on the secondary market, they were too much.
Right.
And now, of course, because they haven't had any success, they don't fill it up either. So it changes.
It changes a lot, and and the 6.1 million people in the greater Miami, Sunrise, Florida area is a lot of people.
Here's something though, and this is where you would hope you would learn from other leagues. So we all knew that Seattle could move in the NBA, but you weren't certain. I was there. I got invited by Microsoft. I was there that season before they moved, and the house was full. The fans were crazy. I was there for shoot around. I mean, there was a lot of people that really still liked the Supersonics, but a billionaire decided to move them, so they moved. I look at the Thunder's attendance today, and they're 28th in the league in attendance. So honestly, they had their little run. It was a new toy, and now it's another failing team. And Seattle, if you opened up a new team there tomorrow, a Supersonics team or something like that, they would do better in attendance.
Yeah.
Yeah, and a lot of it has to do with television markets too. They want specific areas, and they're trying to expand their footprint and all that kind of stuff as well. Although they're locked in now for a lengthy period of time. So,
oh yeah.
I'm
Well,
not
like
sure.
we said, Houston is very similar, if not better, than Arizona for TV.
Oh, it's,
Yes,
better. It's better. It's bigger. I mean, it's like
it's much bigger. Yeah,
it's 6.5 million
Yeah.
area versus like 4.9 for Arizona. It is bigger. And then when we talked about yesterday, Kevin, like Quebec is 800,000 people in their metro area.
I mean, in
Right.
reality, I think the Coyotes have 2 months, maybe 3 at the most, to get this Tempe deal done, and they haven't even had a meeting yet for the board. I don't think it's going to happen.
Yeah. It may not. Because you keep hearing whispers that they don't really have the money to get it all done. But you hear that all the time. So I don't know, what to make of it. But I think we know one thing. I had thought that you'd heard that maybe the league was finally giving up on Arizona, and maybe they are. But if they're even considering going ahead with this 5,000 seat arena, I asked somebody about the Elliot Friedman report, and what he told me is Elliot is right that it's not 5,000, but it's not 3,200 either. So.
Okay. But we haven't heard an NHL comment on it. It would be nice if we heard a comment about it to say something like if they're in favor of it or okay with it, or they've stayed away from this, Kev.
Well, they really have, yeah. So,
and what I'd like to know is whether, because supposedly they really don't have much of a say-so other than what's part of the CBA. But I'd like to know what the Players Association thinks of this, because obviously you go down from a 16,000 seat arena at Gila River to a 5,000 seat arena at Arizona State. That's hockey-related revenue that's costing them. That's going to prevent the cap from going up, along with other things. So that's a factor. It has to be.
Yeah. No, I heard that Sean Shapiro wrote a pretty good story for the Athletic on all the ins and outs of it. I'd like to read that, because I really wonder how much less it would be if you're not drawing. Like, I mean, you can't look at the size of the capacity. You need to look at what they actually draw. Right. So, like now, I don't have an answer for this. Are they papering what little attendance they have? Is that true attendance? Are people paying?
Yeah, we don't know. I did read that article where they said they were getting about 7,000.
Well, other than and I don't know whether this was based on.
Can they charge more? I mean, there was that great old story that I read in somebody's book about John Ziegler and Wirtz sitting around, and Wirtz coming up with the idea of they weren't selling out in Chicago and New York, the lower level seats. And he goes, let's raise the price, because nothing gets people to want things more is than when you charge a lot. They're going to, well, what am I missing? Why are these tickets so
I think there's a fine line with that. Baseball has found that we see a lot of those seats are empty in baseball, though.
Yeah.
Yeah. Well, no, I'm just saying that probably you could charge a little more to get there. So my point, my only point of all this is I'd love to see somebody really break it down, drill down, and let us know, like, what will the difference in the revenue actually be? Because I don't know what their deal was in Glendale in terms of what I seem to recall that they weren't getting a lot of the parking.
No, that was another bone of contention.
Right. So, and maybe they're getting more in Arizona. I mean, I just don't know. It's
still only 3,200 cars.
Well, the park,
it's less than that. It's
I've been to that arena. The parking is part of the mall complex and the restaurants that they have there, so they get no revenue out of the parking.
Yeah, I think that's true, and I know the concession stand. So if they cut a better deal in Arizona, I mean, you can maybe bump that up. So, and again, my only point of all this is it might be less than you think it is. Going from that to the thing, but it may be big. I don't know. So
I don't know. I'll just tell you this: if I'm a fan and I'm walking onto an NCAA campus to go to an NHL game, I don't feel like it's the right league.
Yeah,
I think people give a rat's rump about that.
I think I think the perception is that to use the old Wayne Gretzky description of the New Jersey Devils, it looks pretty Mickey Mouse. It looks pretty weak.
And that's the way I would feel as a fan walking in there. Like,
and perception is reality. And if you're going to say, okay, we're going to play in a 4,000 seat arena, it better be for 3, and for 3 or 4 years.
But from a fan, I think fan perspective, you might be missing the point on that one. I mean, like, for example, if you were going to go see a concert in a 20,000 seat arena versus a 4,000 seat arena,
you'd love it.
You'd be happy.
That's a concert. That's not a
yeah, but it's the same thing. Yeah. I saw the Rolling Stones in the small venue tour, and I still have memorable. It's the same thing. If you're watching a hockey game, regular season game in a tiny, compact arena, okay, I mean, you're going to remember that.
You're going to remember it. It's going to be loud. College games are loud. College games are loud games. I mean, they're loud. It's going to have energy. It's going to have a lot of, it's going to be fun. It's going to be
fun. That's even small for a college arena.
See, I honestly, and Russ and I both experienced this. The 2018 World Junior in Buffalo, they played about half the games at the Harbor Center, which seats about 1,500.
Yeah,
a game there compared to the game in the KeyBank Center, even if the KeyBank Center was half full, which for most of the games it was night and day. So yeah, I think the venue. Yeah, I think the venue is definitely a fact. And the only way that they're going to do this is if they have a deal on the building. And if they don't have a deal on the building, then all this is moot. They will break out the Mayflower trucks at the end of this year, and it'll be heading east towards Houston.
Yeah. Well, one thing we all agree on is that the whole concept is ridiculous. But I think you're totally underselling what the experience will be like for a fan going in. I think people will love the quaintness of it, and they'll be talking about it, and it'll be a novelty, and people will like it. I mean, that doesn't excuse the fact that we're here and it's ridiculous, but I mean, I just can't imagine. No one that I know of anyway is going to go to that game and say, God, this is really weird. I'm on a college thing. They're going to say, oh my God, this is so small and right on top of the players.
I think there is that, Kev, but I also think if you're paying, I don't know, $150 for, a ticket, and you're not near the ice, you're also looking at everything else that place has. Like if you walk into, as an example, the New Jersey Devils may not sell out, but when you walk into the Rock, that whole rotunda area that they have before you get it, it's beautiful. And it's something to look at, and then you start getting a better feeling about the place. They're not going to have that feeling.
Yeah, no, I think you're right. I think they'll see it as a temporary place, and people will look at it in that regard. They know it's not going to be forever, and
I think it's something that'll be memorable. Like I think it's something the players. I bet you the players even say they like it at the end.
For sure, I think the players
would like it. I agree
for sure. I think players are going to like it, and I think the fans will like it for a short term while it's a novelty. Exactly. Like if this stretched out into 4 years. Yeah, I think by then people will.
It'll be 3 years. They can't do a building quicker than 3 years. Like I was told.
Well, it's 3 years. It's not going to be 4 though, is it?
No, but 3 is a long time in that place.
Yeah, I don't. Plus, I don't think it'll be 3 full. I bet it's halfway through.
On top of that, they say the building might not be ready if they go through this, may not be ready for the beginning of next year because they have to make the changes that they have to make, and they may have to have a New York Islander type of road trip at the beginning of the year.
Just play on the road, Mike. It won't affect them.
Oh yeah, there you go. That's great. Let me just add one thing quickly, not about the building and everything, but I took some heat a couple weeks ago when I said that a team like Toronto losing to a team like Arizona, who clearly is being built to lose, at least that's my impression, because they're gonna dump a bunch of players at the deadline. That it's a team like Tampa or a team like Florida, who are one has won 2 Stanley Cups, another one's the best team in the league. Mm-hmm. That Toronto losing to that team is a sign that they're just not as good as people think that they are. And then yesterday, of course, Arizona wins in Colorado in a shootout 3-2, and I got a bunch of flack, and I'm like, well, at least Colorado got a point. At least Colorado got something out of that game. It was not a good effort. They lost in a shootout. The Leafs lost in regulation to Karel Velmelka. This is a team that is not good.
It's going to happen, It's going to happen.
It is. I mean, it's funny. And again, I think this just speaks to our perspective is. But Tom Leland and I had this discussion this morning.
Yeah.
But our take on it, and Tom is a former player, is you forget. Like we want to poke fun at the Arizona Coyotes. That's a terrible team.
Yeah.
But all those guys on those teams can play for other teams.
Sure.
Yeah.
They're all professional players.
Yep.
They all got a lot of pride.
Yes.
And if you don't bring your best game, if you're not playing well, they're spank you. They're gonna beat you.
Yeah,
And also in that weird spot, Kevin, where like you look at a team that expects to do well and they're doing well, and that's great. But the team that expects to do well and is not doing well, then that's terrible. A team that's not expected to do well and doesn't do well is really loose. Is really relaxed. It's like it's totally different. Arizona is in that completely like we're gonna show what we're all about type thing every game. And the pressure that they feel is nil. There's none.
There are players that are dying to get off that team. I saw a game a couple days ago where Antoine Roussel, who is a grade A pest, was speed bagging some player on another team, and I'm like, he wants to get off. He's doing this for one reason. He wants to get traded off of this team and go to a team that needs some sandpaper. And he does
want to get traded, Mike, but he's also like he's Roussel, and if you spit it in the wrong way in a hockey game,
plus,
that's true.
Tom said, this morning, and he's rightfully so. When you're in the middle of the game, you don't have time to think of all these other.
Right. You're not thinking of that.
You're just playing. You're trying to get one more goal than the other team.
There's guys that would do that in a pickup game. They would completely. They don't know who they're playing for. They're completely. I do.
That's how like brothers fight against brothers in hockey games, not even realizing they're fighting their brother.
Yeah, but it doesn't. I don't think this says anything about the Colorado Avalanche.
Okay, but let me ask a question. I know what Tom's saying is true, and I agree with that. But when you get someone like Phil Kessel and he's got 5 goals, he would have more than 5 goals somewhere else. It's clear that you do like you're not playing your best, even if you feel like you're trying your best when the team is that bad too.
Well, but I think it's a chicken and the egg.
Yeah.
Does he have 5 goals because he's not playing well, or is it the team isn't really good? And if the team was better, he'd have 10 goals. I mean, it's kind of hard to know when things are, because even though they're all professionals, this is a collection of players that aren't great. So
right, because he had 20 last year, and he has to have a guy who has to feed him, and there's not a lot
of assists. Like he has a crazy amount of assists.
He does have a good amount of assists.
20 some assists, right? So that's kind of a nutty stat as well, because you would think a worse team those assist numbers.
Just a little breaking news here. Chris Johnston just reported via the Capitals PR that Alex Ovechkin is unavailable for the game against Edmonton tonight due to COVID-19 protocol, and he will not be participating in the All-Star game.
No.
So they cannot penalize him a game
because he's missing a game.
He's missing a game, and he's doesn't mean he's positive. It means that they're suspecting him being positive. So yeah.
Well, it's too bad because he's always gone out of his way to go to those games.
He has.
He's a tough one. He tries to put on a show.
He does.
The chat room is begging for rumors here, and I'll just say one thing, because in Philadelphia last night, the Maple Leafs assistant GM Lawrence Gilman was scouting the Jets Flyers game.
Yep.
Which in my mind, because I don't see somebody that Winnipeg is trading on the blue line, that would, in my mind, would be a check towards them checking out Rasmus Ristolainen, or maybe Russ will say Braun, but I think they're looking for a top 4 defenseman. And based on that, Elliot Friedman.
I think both. I think it would be. Yeah,
both. It could be both. But Elliot Friedman was saying that their long interest in Josh Manson is continuing, and somebody joked they've been interested in Josh Manson since Punch Imlach was GM. So.
He's got a bad hand though. Have they actually?
I think he played in his last. It was a finger injury, but I don't think it's something serious.
Well, he didn't play against Detroit.
Yeah, so I mean I know that it was, but I didn't hear a diagnosis on that. But the question is with Anaheim is whether they can sign Lindholm, Raquel, and Manson, and if they can't, then who would they trade? And I mean that
they're in a really bad spot. And because they're actually playing pretty well. Like they're on this road trip. They had this road trip, and they were 3-0-2 on that road trip.
Yeah.
They're not scoring as many goals, but Gibson has been good, and their defense with Lindholm, I mean, he's been really good. Like their top 4 defensemen are as good, stack up as favorably with everyone. So
yeah, what did they do? Like they were a team that was supposed to this year, get their young guys some experience and trade away these guys like Manson. Like that was their goal. I mean, you would think that at least that was their plan. And they're ahead of schedule, which can mean a lot of different things. But I've noticed in the NHL, so many teams are ahead of schedule more often. And I've talked to Russ about this before, but I think that prospects are just better prepared than they've ever been. And I think that when they put them in there, they're really surprised.
Yeah, I think that there's a lot of that. I think, and now you do have to end up putting some in earlier because, especially because of COVID. I mean, a lot of guys.
I mean, the amount of training they do, Russ, the amount of training these kids do is kind of obscene, and it's really bad. I heard Ray Ferraro recently talking about how the amount of training that youth hockey guys do is just ridiculous, and he thinks it should be stopped. Like that.
Well, I think there's a fine line, and I think he's right. But I also noticed that in the last couple of years, when I'm speaking to some of the youngsters. I'll use just like Cole Knuble as an example. Yeah. I mean, he played baseball up until last year.
Yeah.
And so they're starting to let kids play other sports a little longer, knowing that it stays away from the repetitive injuries. It works your brain a little more. So I think we're starting to at least not have them stop when they're like 13 because all of a sudden you're a hockey player. So that could help.
If you have to do anything in your life 3 to 5 days a week all year long, you're going to grow to hate it. Like, that's reality. So it's like, I mean, and I don't know
about that.
Same thing for 48 years. I don't hate
it. I write every day. I love it.
For fun. Okay, this is our job. I know it's a great job. We have a fantastic job, but I should have added for fun. Like if you're doing the same thing.
Okay, so would I get sick of milkshakes if I had milkshakes 3 to 5 times a week? I would not get sick of them.
I can't do anything for fun 3 to 5 days.
Your pancreas might in terms of producing insulin because you'll be a diabetic.
But my brain would not.
Well, I have a rumor, Mike. Because it's not really a rumor, but it's a discussion point. Mm-hmm. Because like the chat room, I too am begging for rumors, guys. It's really there's nothing going on right now.
I mean, I can give you one after.
I've never remembered. I can't remember a time. I mean, usually the trade deadline is at the end of February, so it's a little different. But
let me offer something that's I think encouraging for the whole rumor situation. Right now, you have 11 teams that are basically out of it. 8 teams in the East and 3 teams in the West, which means they're in full sell mode. So the only thing, and Kev, we talked about this before, is that there are so many teams right up against the cap. The teams that have the ability to retain and have the salary room to do that are going to hit the mother load because they're going to be the third team in these deals, and they're going to be able to retain salary and get assets for that.
Yeah, and the Coyotes have come out publicly now. They're the third team. We now know Detroit, Seattle, and Arizona are willing to take.
They got money. And I talked to somebody yesterday who was like, give me the percentage of trades you think that'll happen between now and the deadline that don't involve salary either being kept by a team or being like he said he thinks that percentage is going to be like 5%. He says every trade you see is going to have salary kept. That's some salary cap.
Or players sent simply to get
right, or a third team involved, right? Like
I sent a text to someone to ask. I said I'm just looking for rumors. What's going on? He goes, I got nothing for you. He said, there's nothing going on. It's just early. He said, we are going to have trades, but he said, nobody's really talking now because we're all so tight. We're waiting for, to see what happens if somebody gets hurt, we're going to wait and see.
There's a big feeling of like, what's going to happen after the All-Star game in terms of, we're going to be missing less COVID games because of what's happening. And will that change the dynamic of everything?
I think it will. I mean, I'll give you this. The team that has been at the Wells Fargo the most is the Dallas Stars. They've been there an obscene amount of times in the last 2 weeks. So clearly they are looking to make a deal with either the Flyers or somebody the Flyers keep playing, which is no 2 teams that they keep playing. So it's got to be the Flyers. So are they interested in Giroux? Are they interested in trading Klingberg to them because the Flyers think they could sign him? I mean, those are the things that go out.
Have had interest in Hudobin too. The Flyers have also had interest in Hudobin, so I think that's also.
I'll give you a possibility because Russ, what is the predominant in terms of the Dallas Stars? They have Heiskanen, they have Esa Lindell, they have Rupe Hintz. They collect Finns.
Mm-hmm.
I bet you that supposedly they might be interested in Jeff Petrie, but I would think that they'd be interested in Ristolainen.
So Ristolainen too, yep.
The thing about Ristolainen,
they've been there a lot.
That's interesting. The thing about Ristolainen is, and I wouldn't be surprised at all if that happened. Another thing though that happens with that Russ, as you know, is like a scout will be like we'll just like say, okay, there's like 6 teams coming through this city, so I'm going to go there for a while. Like I'm just going to go there, and that. Because scouts don't want to travel around.
No, but this is an analytics scout. This isn't just your average scout.
Okay.
Right. And
it's different.
I don't know that they'd be, really interested in Ristolainen. I mean, why would they, an unrestricted free agent like?
It depends on whether they think they're contending for a playoff spot.
Yeah, I'm with Kevin. I don't think
I don't see it,
but I do think it's
really want to keep him, and it's crazy.
They do.
And,
I agree with that.
It doesn't logically make a whole lot of sense from people's perspective, but remember what they gave up for him. Remember all the heat they took for how much they gave up for him,
right? And
that plays into it. But also they legitimately think he's good, and they think he's lit, and they think he's a flyer, quote unquote. And
here's what I would say.
I do have something I want to get before we run out of time.
Go ahead.
And that is a player whose name came up when I was looking at free agent UFAs and stuff like that are going to be in the summer, and this is going to be. This name is getting more and more interesting all the time, and that is Brian Rust from the Pittsburgh Penguins.
Mm-hmm.
He is a UFA coming up, and he's he now has 32 points in 24 games. He's been hurt, so he hasn't played. But he has. If you were to put that over the season, it's like a 110-point season that he's projecting out to.
Yeah, and he's making $3.5 million.
Making $3.5 million. The Penguins have, from everything I've heard, they're going to keep their defenseman, that I can't.
Letang.
Yeah, Letang's going to stay, and that Malkin's could go either way, but then if you look at Russ is probably more important than either of those guys right now, and I mean Letang has had a hell of a season, so it's hard to say.
Well, I would think that Brian Burke and Ron Hextall would recognize that Rust is an integral part of that team, the way he's performed over the last few years. And you've got players on that roster. Not to say that you can dump them for nothing, but I think you could find a home for a guy like Jason Zucker, who's making $5.5 million.
Yeah.
So that I think that they would trade a Zucker and sign a Rust before he gets to UFA.
He's a playoff performer for them.
Yeah, I mean, and this is the thing.
That's for sure going to happen, but I think that is something that like I say, is for sure going to happen because they have to do something.
This is a guess on my part, but I don't believe they're trading Rust.
I don't think they're going to trade him. No, I agree with you. I 100% agree with you. I don't think they're going to trade him at all. But I think that what they're going to have to do to keep him is going to be.
I think that Evgeny Malkin sent a message to the Penguins when he said at a press conference and joked around with the press, I don't need money. I got a lot of money.
Right.
Yeah.
I think he said, I want to stay here. I'm going to take it. You need to do what you're going to need to do. If you listen to that tape, it was almost like he was planning that. You know what I mean?
Yeah.
Give me $5 million a year and a no move clause. And
maybe less than that. I'm thinking 4 point something. So.
Heck, I did want to give a scenario to the chat room so they understand why I think even the Flyers could be interested in Klingberg. Just because they have Ryan Ellis, it doesn't mean they don't need Klingberg, because if you got Klingberg, you no longer have to worry about is Ryan Ellis going to be in or out of the lineup to be the top power play guy, because that's one of the biggest things that suffered for the Flyers this whole year is the minute Ellis was out, their power play went dead. And you don't know next year, is he still going to have some lingering issues? So if you get Klingberg, who has been really durable, then you don't have to worry about that, and that's assuming they can't sign Ristolainen.
But
here's the thing, though. I think you're going to have to run that trade by Mike because you're going to have to pay Klingberg $8 million, and then that may put him over that Mike level of how many different players. So
I know. I'm okay. I am only saying what Klingberg and his representative has been saying to the Star. Now that might be total BS, but that's apparently the
line. No, I think that is his asking price is more than $8 million a year. So
right. He wants to get close to Heiskanen, who's being paid $8 million a quarter, and if they don't pay it, and that's the reason why Dallas is probably going to trade him. But
one of the things, and this is important to bring up because I've talked about this before, but I still think the Lightning, and I actually brought this up to Eric Erlandson, who's the Lightning insider this morning. He pointed out like how desperate the Lightning cap situation is, that they had to play, and we all know this, they had to play short because they are so tight.
Right.
Like he said, it will be impossible for them to move anyone without moving somebody off their roster. And he listed all the players. All those players are making $700,000 or $800,000. He said you can't get, moving younger players off the roster doesn't work. And I said, yeah, but he's going to, call Steve Yzerman, and he's going to get them to retain salary. And Eric pointed this out, and he's got all the math. They still will have to move someone off their roster.
Yeah, I hate to say this in a way, and obviously they're not going to take this point of view. They're praying somebody gets hurt. They're going to get somebody on LTIR.
I don't know if they're praying, but that's what the GM said to me today. That why there's no talk going on is because people are waiting to see who gets hurt.
Yeah,
and if someone gets hurt, then they'll have some space and they can, move a guy in.
This is why I'm saying like the Buffaloes, the Arizonas, the Seattles, the Detroits, maybe a couple other clubs are going to be key to the deadline because like a team like Toronto, okay, they need a defenseman. The only way that they're going to be able to get a defenseman that helps them is A, either trading through a third team, B, the team trading the player retains 50%, or C, they can find a team to take a guy like Nick Ritchie off of their roster, give him away, who's making $2.5 million. Two of those things have to happen for them to make a deal possible, and that means giving up extra draft picks or extra prospects. It's going to be complicated, but I think that right now all these contending teams are going to be willing to do that because that's the only way they're going to be able to make moves.
Yeah, one thing that we need to make clear is like there's always salary cap issues every trade deadline. But it's far different this year because of how tight teams are. Like before when we were talking, they had no cap space. They'd have $1.5 million where you can finagle a little bit. Nobody's got anything. Right. Now, so that's why
$63,000.
Yeah, like that's why the guy said, we're going to wait till the last minute and see who's injured and see who's out. He goes, there are going to be trades for sure, but he said, it's not going to be like it's been in the past. Everyone's going to have to really, you're not going to be able just to get a third party involved and solve all your problems. Right. You're going to have to move someone.
So those teams like Arizona, if they're going to take in money, we just talked about how little money they're making. They're going to have to pay those salaries.
Well,
they're taking.
They are.
See, the thing is, okay, Arizona is limited in the sense that they're already retaining on Kemper and they're already retaining on Ekman-Larsson. So they only have one deal where they can retain a player that they're trading. So say Kessel, they can retain half on Kessel. But what they can do is take players from other teams.
But they have to pay that money, Mike. That's
right. But they're
making less than $500,000 a game.
They traded assets to Vancouver to get a first round pick because they didn't have a first round pick. They're in that game right now. There's no stopping it.
But they also trade assets because they didn't have to pay them anymore.
Well, but do they really want to do that if they're going to just sell the team to? Right, to somebody from Houston, they must really believe they're going to get this done. If they're going to,
I'm sure they believe it, but there's going to be a point where, you look at it and you're staring it in the face, and then it's like it doesn't look so good anymore.
How about the? And I don't even. It's hard for me to imagine the league would do this, but I've seen this scenario all over social media where the league buys the team back, for the price that the guy paid. And then charges, Houston $600 million to start over.
I think it's plausible.
That's what I think.
It seems unethical to me, but doesn't it?
But we're talking about professional sports. It's like
you get a franchise.
It's going to have a new name, Kev. So it's a new franchise.
It's just a franchise. You're getting a franchise. So
but you're not going through. At least there was a process by which you got players. This one, you have existing players and contracts and commitments. It's not the blank chalkboard that you have, with another expansion team.
What was the amount that Seattle paid again?
750. I think.
So if they given them a cut, they took off 100.
Well, I just threw that out there because I forgot what Seattle was. So then it would be 7, but it just doesn't seem right. I mean, there's actually, let's take it even further. There's actually a culture within that dressing room.
And frankly, what Seattle got in the expansion draft is better than what Arizona has right now.
Is it? It's close.
Yes. Yeah, I don't know. I don't know, Mike. On the show of hands, how many think that Seattle did a good job on the expansion? Because I'm not among them.
No. I mean, the thing is, Kev, we're looking at it through the prism of what happened in Vegas, and you can't.
I'm not. I pushed that aside because I said beforehand that everybody had gone to school. Nobody was going to give them extra assets, and what happened? Nobody gave them any extra assets.
Yeah, no, there were some
there were some head scratching picks over certain players.
That's what my problem was. I didn't understand what they were doing.
Guys like that. Yeah. There's some really bizarre ones.
No, they did. Yeah, and they took some players that they took some players that really didn't make any sense, to be honest.
Alexander Drew is a perfect one.
Yeah,
that's the issue I have with them because it's not their fault that everybody got smarter and figured out, you're just not helping yourselves if you give them 3 players not to take one guy that you don't want to lose.
So one name I heard, and the last thing we'll do before we get out of here today, one name I heard that is possibly out there, and this is surprising because we talked about him before, is Connor Garland. That Connor Garland could be moved.
Well, this is Rutherford's gambit act. This is like Jim Rutherford. You can depend on him to make the deadline interesting, and he's going into Vancouver basically with a clean slate, like he did in Pittsburgh. Kev, he made big moves. He made big bold moves, and I think he's going to do the same thing. Like I don't think anybody. I heard Friedman say he thinks the only people that are safe in Vancouver are Demko, Hughes, and Pettersson, and everybody else. You could possibly, not saying all of them, but you could see a few of them being traded.
I think he wants to keep Besser, and this is a feeling I have, and just from talking to GMs around the league, I think he wants to keep Besser, and that's why Garland is.
And Friedman did mention New Jersey when it came to Garland, and because Garland is signed. But I'll tell you this, because Russ was high on them, and I was slightly high on them. After watching the New Jersey Devils the last couple games, boy, I mean, okay, you can't look good when John Gillies and Akira Schmid.
No, I mean that's killing them.
But they're really missing a lot, Russ. They need a lot of work still.
They do. We didn't pick them for the playoffs, but I certainly thought that they could be an interesting team.
Yeah,
I thought they could be an interesting team. And look, I mean, Jack Hughes is better. You know what? I had a conversation recently, and we may all, and X going to hate this, but I'm still going to say it. He's already making the face. So everybody knows.
Sam the Eagle.
He did. But we may have overrated Mackenzie Blackwood too. And that, if we did, they're in trouble if we did.
Yeah, well, I mean, they go out and they go out and they sign Corey Crawford. He retires. They go out and they sign Jonathan Bernier, and his career might be over with this hip injury. Mackenzie Blackwood can't play because of COVID. Now can't play because he's injured. And they have a goalie prospect in Nico Dawes that they haven't called up because they don't want to expose him to what he would be exposed to if he's playing for the Devils. That's not a good situation to be in.
But if Blackwood's not good, if he turns out that he is less than average, that is going to severely hurt this team.
But I'm not ready to make that statement yet.
No, I'm just saying he might be.
I think what they are is young, and young is either really good or really bad, and that's what they are. When you watch them, they can be really good and they can be really bad. And when they look bad, they look bad. Like the young teams can look really bad. Like
but his save percentage has dropped like a stone. It was 918, 915, 902, and now 894.
Yeah, and he may have been playing hurt, Russ.
That's fine. But it was 902 last year.
Yeah, and this is a season in which save percentage has gone up pretty significantly.
Yeah.
So I mean, these are bad warning signs. That's all I'm saying.
No, they are for sure. That's all the time we have for today, folks. thank you for following, watching, subscribing. Do whatever you possibly can to help us out. Would be great. Go to patreon.com/hockey if you feel so inclined. That's where you can help us out in a financial way. But otherwise, just tell your friends and please subscribe. That would be wonderful. Remember, without the buzz, it is just hockey. We will all talk to you again. Well, 3 of us will talk to you again tomorrow. 1 will talk to you on Friday. We'll be back then. Kevin,